Luke had always lived a quiet life on his small ranch, far away from the noise of the town. Most days were the same. He woke up before sunrise, put on his boots, fed the horses, checked the fences, and worked until the sun dropped behind the hills. He didn't complain about the silence, but sometimes he wondered what it would feel like to speak to someone in the morning instead of just listening to the wind. He had grown used to being alone, and after so many years, he believed nothing new would ever happen on his land. One cold morning, as frost still covered the grass like thin glass, Luke walked toward the barn carrying a bucket of feed. The horses inside were restless, their hooves tapping lightly on the wooden floor. That wasn't unusual, but something else caught his attention. A soft sound, like breathing, but not from an animal. He slowed down. The barn door creaked as he pushed it open, and the horses lifted their heads, watching him. Luke stepped inside, his boots crunching on straw. The cold air inside held a faint warmth, as if someone had slept there through the night. He stood still for a moment, listening. There it was again, a careful, shaky breath, almost like someone trying not to be heard. His heart tightened. He had dealt with sick animals before, stray dogs and even wounded deer sheltering from hunters, but this sound was different. Human, uncertain, afraid. He walked deeper into the barn, toward the far corner where old blankets and tools were stacked. The horses kept turning their heads toward that corner too, their ears twitching. Luke gently moved aside a broken rake, then a wooden box, and that's when he saw her. A young Apache woman was curled up on the straw, wrapped in a worn blanket that looked like it had been stitched together many times. Her dark hair was messy from the cold night, and her face looked tired as if she hadn't slept in days. One of her hands held the blanket close to her chest, and her feet were bare except for thin wrappings of cloth that had torn in several places. She looked fragile and exhausted, and Luke could see the faint tremble in her shoulders. For a moment, Luke simply stared, unsure what to do. He had not expected to find a stranger, especially a young woman, in his barn. He took one small step back, not wanting to frighten her. She sensed movement and opened her eyes quickly, fear flashing across her face. It was clear she expected trouble. Her breathing grew quick and unsteady, and she tried to pull herself up, but she was too weak. "It's all right," Luke said softly, lifting both hands to show he meant no harm. He kept his voice steady, calm, as if speaking to a frightened animal. "I'm not going to hurt you." The woman looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. She didn't speak at first. Her lips were dry, and her voice seemed stuck in her throat. Luke waited patiently, giving her time. He could see she was trying to decide if he was dangerous or safe. Finally, in a tired whisper, she said, I'm sorry. I didn't want trouble. I only needed shelter for one night. I will leave." Her words were shaky, but her pride was clear. She wasn't begging. She wasn't asking for anything. She was simply explaining, trying to show she wasn't a threat. Luke took a slow breath, feeling a deep pull in his chest. She didn't look like someone running away from mischief. She looked like someone running from fear, exhaustion, and loneliness. "You don't need to leave right away," he said. "You look cold and tired. Let me get you some water first." She shook her head lightly, as if she didn't want to ask for help, but her eyes betrayed how weak she truly was. Luke stepped back toward the doorway and returned with a flask of water. He set it down near her, not too close, letting her choose to reach for it or not. After a few seconds, she picked it up slowly and took small, careful sips. The way her hands trembled made Luke realize how long she must have been walking alone. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, studying his face. Then, in a low voice, she said, "Tala." Luke nodded. It suited her, short, strong, and calm. "I'm Luke," he said. "This is my ranch." She gave a small nod in return. Her eyes drifted toward the open door, where the morning frost shone under the sunlight. Luke could see she was thinking about leaving, but she looked too weak to walk far. "You can stay here for a little while," he said. "I don't mind." Tala pressed her lips together, unsure. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You didn't," he said. "You were just trying to survive." There was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Luke stood beside the stall, watching her as she settled back against the straw. She looked relieved, but also guarded, as if she still wasn't sure she could trust him. Luke stepped outside briefly and returned with a small loaf of bread. He placed it near her the same way he had placed the water, without forcing it toward her. She looked at it for a long moment, then slowly broke a piece off and ate it in small, careful bites. Luke could see she had not eaten properly in a long while. He worked quietly around the barn while she ate, not wanting her to feel watched. He brushed the horses and cleaned their stalls, but kept glancing toward the corner where she sat. There was a calmness in the barn that morning, something soft and unexpected. For years his ranch had been silent, but Tala's presence somehow filled the space in a way he hadn't realized he missed. As she finished the last piece of bread, she finally spoke again. "I didn't know where I was going," she said softly. "I just kept walking." Luke didn't push her for details. He could hear the pain behind her words. "You're safe here for now," he told her. "You can rest as long as you need." Tala looked at him with gratitude she didn't know how to express. Her eyes softened, her shoulders relaxed slightly, and for the first time that morning, she looked less like a frightened traveler and more like someone who carried hope. Luke returned with a thick blanket and handed it to her. She held it close, as if she couldn't remember the last time someone had shown her kindness. When she lay back down, exhaustion washed over her face. Luke stepped outside the barn and stood in the sunlight, thinking about the strange turn his morning had taken. He knew nothing about Tala or the danger that might follow her, but something inside him told him she needed help, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted to be the one to give it. His quiet life had stayed the same for years, but now, with one unexpected discovery in his barn, everything felt different. The ranch didn't feel empty anymore, and though he didn't fully understand it yet, he knew that Tala's arrival would change his days in ways he could never have imagined. By the time the sun rose high in the sky, Tala had fallen into a deep sleep on the fresh blanket. Luke kept checking on her from a distance, not wanting to disturb her. He wondered where she came from, how far she had walked, and what kind of trouble she had escaped. But he also knew that some stories took time to come out. For now, all that mattered was that she was safe, warm, and no longer alone. As Luke walked out of the barn, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose, of someone depending on him for more than chores or ranch work. Tala wasn't just a stranger sleeping in his barn. She was a sign that life could still surprise him, still bring new people and new meaning to his quiet world. He didn't know it yet, but finding her that morning was the beginning of a bond that would grow stronger with every passing day. The next morning, Luke woke up earlier than usual. The sky was still dim, touched with the first hints of dawn, but he was already thinking about the young Apache woman sleeping in his barn. He wasn't worried that she would harm anything. He just felt a quiet responsibility he hadn't felt in a long time. As he put on his boots and stepped outside, the cold air touched his face, and a soft wind carried the smell of hay from the barn. He wondered if Tala had rested well, or if she had woken up afraid again. He hoped she had found at least a little peace. Luke pushed the barn door slowly, not wanting to startle her. The horses lifted their heads when he entered, their ears twitching with curiosity. In the soft light of early morning, he saw Tala still curled up in the corner, wrapped in the thick blanket he had given her. Her breathing was steady now, no longer shaky like the day before. She looked peaceful, as if she had finally slept without fear. Luke stood there for a moment, feeling something soften inside him. He didn't want to wake her yet, so he quietly began his chores. He fed the horses, brushed the young mare who still acted nervous around strangers, and swept the floor. Every now and then, he glanced toward the corner. Tala shifted slightly, as though she sensed movement around her. Finally, after some time, she opened her eyes. She looked confused at first, as if she had forgotten where she was. Then she saw Luke and relaxed a little, her breathing calming down again. "Good morning," Luke said gently. Tala nodded slowly. She sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The morning air inside the barn was cold, and her thin clothes didn't help much. Luke walked over with a warm cup of tea he had prepared on the stove in his house. He held it out carefully, making sure she felt no pressure to take it. She looked at the cup for a moment, then took it with both hands, warming her fingers around it. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," he replied. "How are you feeling today?" She looked down at the ground before answering. "Better, I think. I am not used to sleeping safely." Luke felt his chest tighten a little at those words. He didn't ask why. He didn't push for details. He knew her story would come out when she was ready. For now, he just wanted her to feel safe. He gave her space while she drank the tea and then offered her some bread and fresh apples. She ate slowly, as if she still felt unsure whether accepting kindness was allowed. After breakfast, Tala stood up carefully. Her legs were weak, and she held on to the wooden wall for support. Luke noticed the bruises on her feet and knew she must have walked for days. He hesitated, then asked gently, "Do your feet hurt?" She nodded. Only a little. Luke didn't believe the little, but he respected her strength. "I have clean bandages and warm water," he said. "If you're all right with it, I can bring them. You can wash your feet and wrap them properly." Tala looked surprised. No one had offered such care in a long time, maybe ever. She looked down for a moment, then nodded slowly. Luke went to his house and returned with a small basin of warm water and fresh cloth. He set them down beside her, and she knelt carefully, washing her feet in silence. While she worked, Luke quietly fixed a few things around the barn: loose boards, stacks of hay, and some broken tools. He wasn't doing anything urgent. He just wanted to give her time without hovering. Yet he stayed close enough so she didn't feel abandoned. When she finished, she tied the clean cloth around her bruised feet and sat back, looking a little more comfortable. "You can stay in the barn for a while," Luke said gently. "Until you're stronger. It's warm at night, and the horses won't disturb you." Tala looked at him as if she wanted to argue. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. She finally whispered, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Luke thought about that for a moment. He wasn't a man who spoke much, and he didn't have fancy answers. Finally, he said, "Because you needed help, and because I'd hoped someone would help me too if I were in your place." Tala looked at him with a quiet expression, almost as if she didn't know what to say. The world had not been kind to her, and she wasn't used to simple kindness. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her and lowered her gaze, but Luke could see something new in her eyes. Trust, or at least the beginning of it. Later in the morning, Tala insisted on helping with chores, even though she still looked weak. Luke tried to stop her, but she shook her head. "If I stay here, I should help," she said softly. "I don't want to feel like a burden." "You're not," Luke replied. But he understood. Some people needed to feel useful to feel safe. He let her gather small bundles of hay and place them near the horses. She worked slowly but carefully, her movements gentle. Luke noticed how the animals responded to her. Even the nervous mare, who barely let Luke touch her some days, lowered her head near Tala, almost as if drawn to her calm presence. Tala ran her fingers along the mare's neck softly, and the horse relaxed under her touch. "She likes you?" Luke said, slightly surprised. Tala gave a small smile, the first real one he had seen on her face. "Animals trust me more than people," she said quietly. Luke didn't know what hurt lay behind that sentence, but it made him feel protective in a way he couldn't explain. He wanted her to know this ranch was not like the world she had escaped. Here, she didn't have to be afraid. As the hours passed, Tala grew more comfortable around the barn. She moved slowly, sitting down whenever her legs trembled. Luke brought her more warm food at noon and checked her feet again. She thanked him each time, her voice soft but sincere. Luke didn't want her to feel uncomfortable, so he kept his words few and his actions gentle. Something between them was forming, a quiet connection, built not on questions or demands, but on simple presence. When afternoon sunlight streamed through the barn's open window, Tala finally spoke more freely. She told Luke she had walked far, crossing dry land and sleeping in hidden places. She didn't explain why she left her home or who she was running from, but Luke didn't press her. He only nodded and listened, letting her set the pace. Her voice was calm, but beneath it, he could feel the heaviness she carried. After a quiet pause, she said softly, "You have been kinder than anyone in a long time." Luke felt something warm inside his chest, but he didn't show it. He only replied, "Everyone deserves kindness when they're hurting." Tala looked down at her hands. Her fingers were thin, her skin roughened by travel. She seemed like someone who had fought hard just to survive each day. Yet there was a strength in her, quiet, steady, almost beautiful in its simplicity. The day passed gently. Luke showed her where the water pump was, where she could wash her hands and face, and where she could sit in the shade. He offered her a place inside his house for meals, but she refused gently, saying she felt safer in the barn for now. Luke respected her choice, though he wished she knew she didn't have to hide from him. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in warm colors, Tala sat near the barn door, watching the horizon with thoughtful eyes. Luke sat a short distance away, repairing an old saddle. The silence between them felt natural, almost comforting. Finally, Tala spoke again. "I don't know how long I will stay," she said. "I don't want to bring trouble." Luke paused from his work and looked at her. "You don't have to decide right now. Just rest and heal. That's enough." She studied his face, trying to understand him. In her world, kindness often came with conditions, but Luke offered nothing but sincerity. Slowly she nodded. As night settled in, Luke brought her another blanket and a small lantern. She lay down in her corner of the barn, and when she pulled the blanket around her, she looked more at peace than she had the day before. Luke stood near the doorway, watching her for a moment. The barn felt different now. Not just a place for animals and tools, but a place where someone else breathed, someone who needed care. He didn't know how long Tala would stay, or what challenges might follow her, but he knew he would help her as long as she needed him. That night, as he walked back to his house under the starry sky, Luke felt something unexpected inside him. His ranch, once filled only with silence, now carried a warm presence, and though neither of them understood it fully yet, a bond was forming, quiet, gentle, and destined to grow stronger. Days passed quietly, and Tala slowly grew stronger. She was still careful around Luke, still unsure how long she would stay, but something in her had changed. She no longer trembled when she heard footsteps. She no longer kept her blanket tight around her even when the sun was warm. She had begun to trust the ranch, the horses, and the silence that once felt threatening but now felt peaceful. Luke noticed these small changes every day, though he tried not to show it. He didn't want her to feel watched, yet he couldn't help it. Every time he stepped into the barn, he felt a calmness he hadn't known in years. One afternoon, when the sun was high and the wind carried the scent of dry grass, Tala was brushing the young mare. The horse had come to love her gentle hands. Luke stood a little distance away, fixing a broken gate hinge. He liked listening to Tala speak softly to the mare, telling it simple things, how the morning felt, how warm the sun was, how the bird outside the barn kept hopping along the fence. Luke admired how Tala could speak so kindly to a creature even after everything she had gone through. She had a softness that survived all her hardships. But the quiet day changed suddenly. It started with the sound of horses approaching. Not Luke's. These hooves were heavier, faster, riding with urgency. Luke stiffened. Tala immediately stepped back from the mare, her eyes widening in fear. She recognized the sound before Luke did. Her breath caught in her throat, and her hands shook again like they had in the first days. Luke stepped outside the barn, shielding his eyes from the sun. 3 men on horseback were riding straight toward his ranch. Their clothes were dusty, their expressions sharp, and their eyes scanning the land as if searching for something. Luke had seen men like them in town before, loud, rough, the type who used force instead of reason. And the moment he saw them, he understood. They weren't here for him. They were here for Tala. He walked forward, standing tall, making sure he reached the front yard before the men did. Tala stayed inside the barn, frozen, but Luke could feel her fear even from a distance. The men stopped their horses a few feet from Luke. One of them, a tall man with a worn leather vest, spoke first. "We're looking for someone," he said. His voice was loud and unkind. "A young Apache girl. She ran away from us. You see anyone come through here?" Luke's heart tightened. He knew right away that Tala wasn't running from simple trouble. These men were the trouble. He kept his face calm and answered, "I haven't seen anyone pass through lately." The man narrowed his eyes. "This ranch is a good hiding spot. Lots of barns and corners. You mind if we look around?" Luke stood firm. "I do mind," he said. "This is private land." The man gave a cold smile. "We're just trying to get back what's ours." Luke's jaw tightened. The word ours made his blood heat. Tala wasn't anyone's property. Whatever these men wanted, it wasn't something good. He stayed steady and replied, "No one belongs to you." The men exchanged glances, annoyed. One of them muttered something under his breath. The tall man leaned forward slightly on his saddle. "Look, Cowboy, we can make this simple. Let us check the barn, and we'll be gone." "No," Luke said plainly. The silence that followed was tense. Luke didn't raise his voice or step back. He stood with the same calm strength he used when taming a wild horse. The men could feel it. They could see he wasn't afraid. Finally, the leader scoffed and pulled his reins. "Fine, but if we find out you're hiding her, we'll be back." Luke didn't answer. He watched them turn and ride away, dust rising behind their horses. Only when they disappeared into the distance did Luke let out the breath he had been holding. He turned around and found Tala standing at the barn door. Her face was pale and her eyes were full of fear. She clutched the blanket tighter around her shoulders, the way she used to on the first day. "They were looking for me," she whispered. Luke nodded softly. "I know. I didn't want to bring danger here," she said, her voice breaking. "I should leave." Luke took a few steps toward her, not too fast, not too close. "You don't have to leave," he said. "You're safe here." "No," she said weakly. "They will come back. They always come back. I cannot let them hurt you." Luke shook his head. "They won't hurt me, and I'm not letting them take you." Tala blinked, tears forming in her eyes. She looked confused, almost overwhelmed. No one had ever stood between her and danger before. She wasn't used to someone choosing to protect her. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They tried to force me to work for them. I escaped when they were fighting over something. They think they own me." Luke's fists tightened at his sides, but he kept his voice steady for her sake. "They don't own you. No one owns you. And I won't let them come near you." Tala covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent emotion, not loud crying, but the quiet, painful kind that comes from carrying fear for too long. Luke stepped closer, slowly, and rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. She simply stood there, letting the warmth of his presence calm her. After a moment, she lowered her hands and looked up at him. "Why would you help me?" she whispered again, the same question she had asked before, but now with deeper confusion. Luke took a breath. "Because you deserve safety. Because you didn't do anything wrong. Because no one should chase you like that." Tala stared at him with eyes full of aching gratitude. She didn't know how to reply, so she simply nodded and let her breath steady again. For the rest of the day, Luke stayed close to the barn, keeping watch. Tala stayed inside, sitting near the horses as if their calm presence helped settle her nerves. Every sound made her flinch, every crow's call made her turn her head. She wasn't used to safety. She didn't know how to trust it. But she tried, because Luke had given her a reason to believe she wasn't alone anymore. As the sun began to set again, the sky turning orange and pink, Luke sat outside the barn sharpening a tool. Tala walked out quietly and sat near him, but at a safe distance. The silence between them wasn't heavy this time. It was almost warm. "Thank you," she said softly, "for protecting me." Luke glanced at her, then looked back at the tool. "I'd do it again," he said simply. Tala didn't speak after that. She didn't need to. The quiet evening wind carried a message between them. Something unspoken but strong, something that said she belonged here more than she realized, something that said Luke wasn't just helping a stranger anymore. He was helping someone he had come to care for. Later that night, when Tala lay down in her corner of the barn, she didn't wrap herself tightly like before. She placed the blanket over her gently, her body finally relaxing. Luke checked on her once more before going to his house. She met his eyes and gave a small, peaceful nod. It was the first time she had looked calm since the men arrived, and for the first time, Luke understood something clearly. Tala's fear wasn't gone, and her past still followed her. But she trusted him now. She believed he would stand between her and danger. And that trust stirred something deep inside him, something protective, gentle, and steady. The men would return. Luke knew that. Trouble rarely ended in one visit, but he also knew one more thing. He would face whatever came, and he would not let Tala go back to a life of fear. Something had begun between them, something quiet and strong, and neither of them fully understood it yet, but both felt it growing like a warm flame in a cold room. The days after the men's first visit were quiet, but the silence felt different now. Luke could feel tension in the air, like the ranch itself was waiting for something. He kept an eye on the road whenever he worked outside, and Tala stayed close to the barn, always alert. She tried not to show her fear, but Luke could see it in the way she paused when she heard horses in the distance, or how she listened carefully before stepping outside. He wished he could take that fear away, but he knew the only thing he could do was stay near and prove she wasn't alone anymore. One morning, Luke found Tala sitting on the fence by the corral. The young mare stood beside her, nudging her shoulder gently. Tala's eyes were on the horizon, the sky painted gold by the early sun. "You didn't sleep much," Luke said, leaning against the post near her. Tala gave a small smile that didn't fully reach her eyes. "I keep thinking they will come back." Luke nodded. They might. But if they do, I'll be here. She looked at him, really looked at him, as if trying to understand why someone would stand for her without asking anything in return. You don't have to risk anything for me, she said quietly. I know, Luke replied. But I choose to. Tala lowered her gaze, touched by his simple words. Most people she had met in life only helped when there was something to gain. But this man had offered protection, warmth, and shelter without wanting anything. It confused her at first, but now it brought her a comfort she didn't know she needed. Throughout the next days, Tala helped Luke more around the ranch. She swept the barn when her legs were strong enough, helped feed the horses, and even walked with Luke to check the far fences. She didn't speak much when they walked, but her silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful, like she finally felt safe enough to breathe fully. Luke found himself looking forward to those quiet walks. He liked the way Tala studied the land, the way she touched the grass with her fingertips, and how her eyes softened when the wind moved through her hair. She was still healing, still carrying scars from her past, but every day she seemed a little lighter. But the peace didn't last. One afternoon, as Luke was repairing a broken wagon wheel, he heard the unmistakable sound of horses approaching again. This time, there were more hooves, faster, louder, closer. Tala, who had been hanging washed cloth on the fence, froze and looked toward the road with wide eyes. Luke stood up quickly, wiping his hands, and moved toward her. Go inside the barn, he said softly but firmly. Stay behind the stalls. Don't come out until I say so. Tala swallowed hard and nodded. She ran into the barn, her heart pounding. Luke walked toward the open yard just as the men from before rode in again, this time with 2 more riders. Dust rose around them as they stopped in a rough line. The leader glared at Luke. We told you we'd be back, he said coldly. And we know she's here. Luke stood in the center of the yard, alone but unshaken. No one here belongs to you, he said calmly, the same steady voice he used with wild cattle. One of the men snorted. We're not asking permission this time. Luke's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't move. You're not stepping onto my land, he said. Turn back. The leader gave a dry laugh. You're 1 man. We're 5. You really think you can stop us? Luke didn't raise his voice. He just stepped forward, the sunlight catching his calm but firm expression. If you try to take her, you will have to get through me. The moment stretched tight, like a pulled rope. The men looked at each other, surprised. This wasn't how most ranchers reacted when threatened. Luke didn't look scared. He didn't look angry. He just looked certain. One rider dismounted, taking a step forward. Move aside, cowboy. Luke didn't move. The rider hesitated, realizing Luke wasn't bluffing. The others shifted uncomfortably. Something about Luke's stillness made them uncertain. He wasn't reaching for a weapon, but his presence alone was strong enough to make them think twice. Finally, the leader spat on the ground. This isn't over, he growled. You're making a mistake protecting her. Luke met his gaze without blinking. Then it's my mistake. The leader pulled the reins sharply, and the group turned their horses around, frustrated but unwilling to push further. They rode off, leaving a cloud of dust and an echo of tension behind. Luke watched them disappear before he turned toward the barn. He walked in slowly, knowing Tala had heard everything. She stood trembling beside the mare, her hands gripping the wooden stall. When she saw Luke, tears filled her eyes. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. They could have hurt you. Luke walked closer, stopping just a step away from her. They didn't, he said softly. And they won't. Not while you're here. Tala's breath shook. I don't know why you care so much. Luke took a slow breath. Because you deserve to be safe. Because you deserve a life where no one chases you or controls you. And because you're not alone anymore. Tala covered her mouth with her hand as emotion overcame her. She wasn't crying loudly, but her silent tears spoke louder than any words. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her, chosen to stand for her without expecting anything. Luke gently took her hand in his, not to pull her or lead her, but simply to show he was there. Her fingers were cold and trembling, but she didn't pull away. She looked up at him with eyes full of something new, trust mixed with a soft warmth that hadn't been there before. "Luke," she whispered, "I don't want to run anymore." He nodded. "Then don't. Stay here. Stay where you're safe." Tala took a breath, steadying herself. "Can I stay with you? Not just in the barn, but here, on your ranch." Luke felt something deep and gentle move inside him. He nodded slowly. "You can stay as long as you want. This place can be your home." Her eyes softened in a way he had never seen. She stepped a little closer, standing fully in the warm lantern light of the barn. "Then I want to stay," she said softly. "I want to build a life here. With you." Luke's heart warmed at her words. He didn't rush forward, didn't speak suddenly. He simply gave her a calm, steady smile, one that carried reassurance and quiet happiness. From that day on, Tala moved out of the corner of the barn and slowly started making a place for herself in Luke's home. She cooked small meals, helped tend the horses every morning, and walked beside Luke during the evening rounds. The house, once silent and lonely, now echoed with gentle sounds. Her soft humming, her footsteps, her laughter when the mare nuzzled her for apples. The ranch changed too. It felt warmer, fuller, more alive. And Luke changed with it. He found himself waking up with a sense of purpose beyond chores. He felt steady joy in just knowing she was near. They talked more, sharing quiet stories about their lives, learning from each other every day. Tala no longer watched the horizon for danger. She watched it with peace. The men never returned again. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was pride, or maybe they realized Luke wouldn't let anyone take Tala away. Whatever the reason, they disappeared from her life for good. And as the seasons began to shift, Tala and Luke built something together. Not rushed, not forced, but natural and steady. Two people who had once lived alone found a home in each other. The barn where Tala had first slept became a part of their shared memory, a place where a frightened young woman found safety and a lonely cowboy found someone to stand beside him. Luke never imagined that discovering someone cold and tired in his barn would change his life. Tala never imagined she would feel safe again, but life had brought them together in the quiet, unexpected way that only true stories carry, slow, gentle, and filled with healing. And as they walked the land together each evening, side by side, both of them knew something simple and beautiful. Tala was his, and he was hers, not because of force or fear, but because two lonely lives had finally found a home.